We will get started momentarily. Thanks for joining us this evening. All right, the time is 6 o'clock, so should we go ahead and get started?
We can do that.
Okay, sounds good. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Let's Talk ADA. This is an opportunity to gather public feedback and have a town hall meeting on the topic of the City of Monterey's ADA transition plan. And we'll make very brief introductions. My name is Nat Rojanasathura. I'm the Assistant City Manager and also serving as ADA Coordinator for the city. And we'll go next to Brianna Kennedy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brianna. I'm working in the City Manager's office to help coordinate the ADA transition plan update, as well as some other projects.
Fantastic. We'll now go to Josephine Ortega. And who's muted?
Sorry about that. Josephine Ortega, plans examiner, architect, working in the building department and here to assist.
Thanks, Josephine, for being here. And next we have Mark Ackerman.
Hi, everyone. I'm also an intern in the city manager's office. I'm helping out Nat and Brianna just kind of with some of the coordination here on this transition plan. Glad to be here.
Great. And then we also on our consulting team from the firm of Jensen Hughes, we have Joshua Klipp as well as Jasper Kirsch. Joshua, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, Josh Klipp. I'm the ADA policy specialist for Jensen Hughes, and I am the basically responsible for looking at the City of Monterey's the accessibility of their programs, services, and activities.
Fantastic. Thanks, Josh. And then last but not least, we also have Jasper Kirsch.
Hello, my name is Jasper Kirsch. I'm a senior accessibility consultant with Jensen Hughes. I'm very glad to be here today. I see a couple attendees, so looking forward to hearing your input. My background is about 20 years of really focused in disability and accessibility, focusing on ADA transition plans, and I've worked with 40 plus public entities over the past 20 years, assisting them in meeting their Title II obligations. And my focus is really on the built environment, and I rely on Josh's expertise for the policy side of things.
That's great. And Jasper, you've had a chance to spend some time here in the city of Monterey as well, as part of our first on the team on the first transition plan, the last one, and also, of course, recently. We're going to go ahead and hand this off to Brianna Kennedy, who will walk through an overview of our ADA transition plan efforts. And go ahead, Brianna.
Perfect. Well, as Nat has said, thank you everyone who's able to join us this evening. We'll be discussing our ADA transition plan update, work that we've done so far, work that we are still in progress with, and what it's all hopefully going to look like at the end. A few housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted to our haveyoursaymonterey.org page, which is our public engagement website, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. We will have a hard stop at the hour mark if we end up getting to that time. I'm going to keep everyone muted until it's time for questions and comments at the end. If you would like to speak, you can use the raise hand function and we will unmute you when it's your turn. All comments will be limited to 5 minutes. You may also submit questions or comments through the Q&A throughout the presentation. For accessibility purposes, I will be reading all text and describing all images in this PowerPoint presentation. I'll try to get through it quickly, and participants may also enable closed captioning at any time. So let's go ahead and get started. This is a timeline of our work that we've done so far. Our first ADA transition plan was developed in 1994 after the Americans with Disability Act was passed. Our 2012-2013 ADA transition plan update included 34 buildings, 27 parks, 22 parking lots and structures, and approximately 1,500 curb ramps and 300 pedestrian signals. In March of 2022, the City of Monterey decided to update this 2012-2013 plan, and we published a request for proposals for a new update to its ADA transition plan. And in June of 2022, Jensen Hughes was selected as City of Monterey's ADA consultant, and we're grateful that they're here with us tonight. In December of 2022, City employees completed ADA self-evaluation surveys, which we'll talk more about. January 2023, first priority sites were surveyed by Jensen Hughes. So Jasper came down to Monterey and did some inspections. And in March of 2023, additional site surveys were done of leased properties and audits of previously inspected facilities and work that had already been done since 2012. And moving forward, we expect in the spring of 2023 that we'll have our initial findings compiled and our first draft put together for review of the updated transition plan. The next slide here is just an image of the project components, which include 2 pathways that lead towards implementation at the bottom. So on the left, we have self-evaluation, which is looking at our program, services, policies, and practices. Part of that process is to review the services and policies that we have, our staff questionnaires that were submitted in December, and then finally providing recommendations on that. And then on the right-hand side, we have our transition plan, which addresses physical barriers. We have facilities, parks, and public rights-of-way that are considered in those, in the physical barriers. And then at the bottom of those, across both fields here, we have public participation and outreach, which is the component that we're doing tonight and that we've done once before previously in January. Eventually, we'll get to our prioritization, budgeting, and scheduling, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And finally, our transition and work plan document and city staff training. In our self-evaluation slide here, I have some check marks of things that have already been completed, which includes our ADA self-evaluation surveys by every department, which we mentioned earlier, city resolutions and ordinances, city policies, and new hire training documents were provided to Jensen Hughes for review, as well as going over the process we use for grievances pertaining to ADA. And in this slide, I do have a small picture of self-evaluation plan components, which includes 13 areas of review recommended by the US DOJ. I'm not going to go through those bullet points. The physical barriers slide also has some steps on the left here that have already been completed, including verification of city-owned properties. We included affordable housing in this transition plan, so we did housing inspections. We are also including some access to premise leases, or basically ensuring that there's access to buildings that are being leased by the city to businesses in Monterey, and those were inspected as well, as in addition to audits of curb ramps and pedestrian signals that have been completed up to ADA standards, and checking of any other ADA upgrades that have been done in Monterey facilities. And on this slide as well, we have a picture of the transition plan barrier ranking for prioritization. So it looks at the severity level of the barriers, the location, the frequency of use, public input, and also the implementation schedule in order to determine a priority for which and which barriers and when should be completed. Currently in progress on this slide, we're still working on data and findings from self-evaluation surveys and policy review, and that's coming up here shortly. We're also waiting for the results of our site investigations and audits that were just recently done earlier in March. Financial planning and budgeting, we have a group coming together to discuss what we would like to do for that, as well as for our barrier mitigation process and strategy. And then eventually, as I said, we'll be receiving our first draft of the ADA transition plan update, which will also include public feedback that we've received from all of these town hall meetings. So you are an important component, and thank you for being here tonight. While I have you, before we open the floor up to comments and questions, we do have spots open on our Disabled Access Appeals Board. The eligibility is 3 board members shall be qualified by experience and training to pass on matters pertaining to building construction and/or state or federal disabled access regulations. 2 members shall be physically disabled, and members shall not be employees of the jurisdiction or employees of the city of Monterey. So that is the eligibility criteria. The application copies are available in person at City Hall, and there's also an online application form available on the City of Monterey's website. You would go to City Hall, Boards, Commissions, and Committees, and it can be found right on the Boards, Commissions, and Committees page. After this meeting, if you are not able to participate with us in person, or if you just are not able to provide all the comments that you would like, you are able to continue to contact us and provide your thoughts on this issue at haveyourSayMonterey.org. This is our public engagement platform, and there's an ADA transition plan update webpage. So I have a snapshot here of the featured item for ADA transition plan update. And then on the right, I have another small snapshot of the inside of the project. You can see information, a lot of the information that we've shared here. And at the bottom of that, you can go to community comments and leave feedback messages for us there. You may also contact us by phone at 831-646-3799 or provide us with an email with your feedback at suggest@monterey.org. And I just have a picture of the Monterey Bay area in this last slide, which is for comments and questions. You may raise your hands if you would like to provide feedback at this time, and we'll go ahead and unmute you.
Okay, thank you so much, Brianna. And we do have some hands raised. So we'll take the first raised hand, and that'll be Wendy Brickman. Hi, Wendy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your focus on this topic. Personally, I'm married to someone who was in 4 car accidents, none his fault, and he can barely walk. So anything you do ADA-wise is really appreciated. As president of Old Fisherman's Wharf Association, I did want to ask about a couple of things. One is the distance from the waterfront parking lot down the causeway is very, very far. There used to be a shuttle, evidently. And also it's extremely, extremely dark for anybody with who wants to come there in the evening. And it's it's owned by the city of Monterey. And I don't know if this fits into your plans or your future, but I wanted to say help. I did get a bid from some lighting companies to try to find out what the cost would be to increase the lighting on the causeway. And I did put in an application to the state senator's office, but there's a deficit with the state. So I'm a little bit less optimistic that they're going to come through. So that was a question about that. And then the other thing, also wharf related, in the waterfront parking lot, I don't think the 50% off ADA policy that you had previously applies. And I've gotten a lot of feedback on that, as well as a lot of feedback on how far it is to walk. And the third thing, is in the causeway with all the vendor permits that are allowed now via the state and the city, it's pretty clogged for people to get through there. And oddly enough, I'm doing a marketing program on an electric scooter, and I just want to make sure that that pathway is wide and easy so that I know I personally start walking on the rec trail to avoid the clutter and the ambiance of everyone clustered around the waterfront lot. And then part of the causeway, some of the newer people may not know, is owned by state of California. So that's sort of a question and an explanation. Any comments there?
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. Very good, good feedback. And when you talk about the causeway, that's over by near the harbor office, the connection to the wharf kind of connects just the walkway that connects, or the pathway between wharf, municipal wharf.
No.
Two and one. No.
The causeway specifically that I know of is connecting to the edge of the waterfront lot owned by the city.
Mhm.
And then half of this causeway is the walkway by the rocks where the sea lions were for quite a while.
Yes.
And then you get to a white post that's sticking out of the rocks, and then it becomes state property.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's very, very dark there at night. And I've been trying to figure out ways to fix that, because I don't think that's an ADA. I mean, it may be an ADA situation, ADA, when it's health and safety and you can't really see. And there's a lot of unhoused individuals sitting there talking to you, and it's a little scary
Mhm.
walking out there. And it also, disincentivizes people to come in the dark to dinner or to enjoy the wharf, which is city owned, as we know.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Wendy. I
Sure.
don't have readily available the the information is going to. I'll need to do a little bit more
Sure.
research about
At
it,
your
and I'll get back
convenience.
to you. But I definitely hear what the feedback I'm hearing to summarize: access to the parking lot, lighting, cost for ADA parking in the lot, and then the causeway issues, ensuring that there's accessibility with the width for whether it's electric scooters or other types of transportation.
And do you think a scooter, now that, electric scooters exist, or electric shuttles, do you think there would ever be a possibility that we could have a shuttle that went from the parking lot to the head of the wharf? Because that is one long walk. If you can't walk very well, it's a long walk.
Mhm. Okay, no, this is good.
That's another point.
Good feedback. I don't know.
I don't know if it falls within your purview and your plan, but when I heard ADA, I thought, oh yeah, thank you, Nat.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Appreciate it. Right, we'll go to, let's see here. Give me 1 minute. We'll go to Paula Hardin or Hardeen.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm a disability rights activist,
Mhm.
and I agree that's a long walk. And I find it extremely troubling that when they wrote the technical requirements for the ADA, they went down to the 1/4 inch height for the lip at a doorway, and they failed to specify any distance that would be related to how far you have to go for an accessible route. But there is a standard that could be used, which is 200 feet without arrest, because that's what's required for being eligible for a handicap tag. So is it possible to provide some benches or something else to make that walk not to be so far? Okay, and then I've got another question. The new PROAG, public right-of-way guidelines have been worked on for 12 years now, and theoretically, any day now, they'll have been adopted by a sufficient number of people. So have you already begun complying with what is going to be the law, or are you waiting until, the law is done? And my third question is, you talked about housing, but I didn't hear the word accessible housing. Have you complied with the FHA 1988 requirement for active planning and affirmative action to make sure that actually accessible housing is built?
Very, very good. Very good questions, Paula. Thank you. We can get back to you on the quarter, the lift, and great suggestion for the benches at the wharf on the Pro WAG. Yes, we're our team. And I can follow up, perhaps if you can email suggest@monterey.org, I can follow up directly with you.
Great.
And our traffic engineering team on how we're complying or what we're working on to comply with that. And then also FHA 1988, I can follow up with our housing team as well. And all the feedback that both you and Wendy have provided are going to the consultants to include as public comments as part of this ADA transition plan. So very helpful feedback.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. We'll go ahead and let's see. We don't have any other hands raised this evening. Any additional thoughts and comments for this town hall meeting from our team? I think we got some more here. Wendy does want to have a couple more comments. Go ahead, Wendy. Nope, I guess not. Wendy decided to leave. Paula, you said you had one more.
Nat and the team tonight, are there any grants available for this type of work so the city doesn't have to shoulder all the cost? I wondered.
Yes, there may be. There definitely may be. I think hopefully you're still with us here, Wendy.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. There may be grants. We're finding opportunities for, depending on the project. We actually have a grant consultant we're working with who we know is prioritizing ADA related grants, infrastructure grants, and those are opportunities, and other projects too, such as the NCIP, which funded the beach mats, the accessible beach mats for Del Monte Beach.
And I would say that Jeff Krebs, if any of you know who he was, when I asked about the causeway issue, I think it didn't fit into an NCIP project. Maybe because it's a commercial area, I'm not sure. Okay. But just FYI.
No, thank you. Thanks, Wendy. Appreciate it. All right, and then Paula, do you have something else?
Yeah.
Well?
One of the things I want to mention that has been a problem is that everybody is treating ADA requirements and FHA 1988 requirements as if they're maximums and not minimums. So they've already, there's 7 requirements to comply with, but they're limited to quote unquote covered dwellings, which basically means rental apartments, multifamily rental apartments and condos, and excludes common sense things like townhouses. You can look in the Federal Register for in 1988 Senate debate to see how the very same things they were talking about then are problems still today because of that. And so they have 7 requirements, minimal requirements, but they have 15 exceptions. And then they have the catch-all: if it's too expensive, if it's unreasonable or technically infeasible, and able people are the ones that get to decide that, not you. And does your building code plan review actually check for compliance with ADA? And as I said, only 2% of multifamily units are required, but the proportion of people with disabilities is 25%. So that's so not adequate. It's sad. And with the housing crisis, and some of the places that do build accessible units, they do stupid things like, because it's an accessible unit, they don't bother to put shelves in above like 3 feet, but the abled units have shelves 6 feet tall. And so there's this misconception in everybody's minds that being disabled equals to be quote unquote the loathsome description of wheelchair bound. We are not wheelchair bound. We are free and able to move because we use a wheelchair, and ambulatory wheelchair users are still disabled. We just can't walk as far. And so when you're designing accessible units, they should not make presumptions, because 16 million people have disabilities like multiple sclerosis, as I do, and only 2 million people use wheelchairs. So, the entire conception of who's disabled is ignored in reality. So those should be a consideration. Also, I don't remember there being a lot of van accessible parking, certainly not on the city streets. They need a wider access aisle and things like that. So I know the new ProAg has specific requirements for the number of van accessible spots that are required. So you might want to look at that too.
Great, thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Paula. Good feedback as well. It's a good point. These requirements are really a minimum, not the maximum, on housing and townhomes. We have a city-owned housing project that has been proposed, and we will follow up on that. And
because the FHA, when they had the debate about townhouses, they didn't use the legal definition of townhouses. They used the aesthetic definition. And so they defined them as having steps. But that isn't what makes it a townhouse. The difference between a condo and a townhouse is that you own your land when you have a townhouse, but you only own the interior of a condo. So it was just stupid on their part to exclude townhouses from multifamily covered dwellings.
Okay. Thank you, Paula.
Thanks.
Okay, and I think Wendy has one more comment, so let's hear from Wendy one more time. And here we go. You have another thought here?
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect from this meeting, so I'm sorry my comments are fragmented.
That's okay.
But I want to do a shout out to what you have done on the city streets, and most recently with North Fremont, with making it more ADA compliant and downtown. And I just think it's wonderful, and I like seeing that done as widespread as possible to make it easier for people to cross streets.
No, thank you so much. That's really helpful, and thank you for your letter on behalf of the North Fremont Business Association to support the North Fremont Gap Closure Project. That was
sure.
Great. So, all righty, we'll give this back to Brianna.
Thanks, Nat, and thank you so much, Wendy and Paula. Those were really excellent points that you brought up for us. At this time, I just wanted to turn it over to Jensen Hughes, either Jasper or Josh, in case they had any final thoughts that they would like to share with us before we log off.
No, just wanted to thank you both, Paula and Wendy. This is really a very important part of the process, because as outside consultants that don't live in the city, we don't experience the city like you do every day. So it's a really kind of invaluable part of the process, and really appreciate your attendance today. And great points about the FHA and ProAg. Those two codes, of course the ProAg's not enforceable. I've been using it for every public right-of-way survey since 2009, when it was released, the first iteration, and waiting every year for it to get finally adopted and implemented. But that's the base, pretty much the baseline, best information on anything on our public sidewalks, street parking, etc. So we use that, and same with FHA. In California, obviously, when drawings are being reviewed by whether it's public or private building departments don't check for ADA and they don't check for FHA. They're only really concerned about Chapter 11A and 11B of the California Building Code. But yes, we're always looking at every applicable code, and the more stringent one, as well as, you know, my true passions in universal design, you know, the idea that it's the environment prohibiting someone from being free rather than, you know, a person's disability. So I'm always trying to kind of push for more from our clients, where I can, obviously within reason. But just wanted to say thank you.
And I'll just second Jasper.
Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. And for those who weren't able to join us, but were watching this recording, just a reminder that you can still submit feedback to our haveyourSayMonterey.org page, as well as providing feedback via email at suggest@monterey.org.
Great. Thank you so much. And have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you. Take care.